Welcome to the Compass Conversations podcast. We're a community of professional peers who love learning with and from each other. In other words, we choose collaboration over competition. Every conversation here is organic. Even the opening topic isn't settled until 5 minutes before we hit record. And the rest is riffing off of each other's brilliance. Thanks for hanging out with us in a new paradigm of learning, teaching, and expansion, where presence and non-competitive conversation create the space to learn without having to be schooled. Please visit compassconversations.com to discover more about this peer community and to include yourself as a sponsor. Beautiful. Welcome everybody to the next Compass Conversation. I'm Carrie Lake, and as we do, I'd like to open our conversation with this little invocation that is just meant to cultivate a congruence in the foundational heart and energy of why we come together in the first place. So here that is. We enjoy these conversations from our shared sense of connection, camaraderie, and love. Living, learning, leading by example, this community of peers is curious to learn from and with one another, willing to explore together, acknowledging the interspecies family on this planet, while lovingly including ourselves in the family of life from the heart, for the heart, which just touches my heart every time. You know, how can we not enjoy a conversation when we know we get to just share what we're curious about and let our little kid heart come out and explore among others doing the same. At least that's why I show up for all of these things. So everybody, thank you so much for being here. And Crissi, I know you said you had something you're curious about, so I'm super curious to hear what you're curious about. So please take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Carrie. And it's wonderful to be here with Kathy and Carla and Jess and my husband, Mark, and Carrie. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. My curiosity, this has come up for me recently. I'm curious about, there's a whole backstory to it, but I think I'll just lead with the curiosity. I'm curious about how others navigate knowing things need to change, but not necessarily knowing what. And it's not because things are bad or because things are hard. You know, maybe something came up in your life that initiated change, but the curiosity I have, because this is what I'm walking through at the moment, is wow, things are pretty good. I really, our life is good. I'm very grateful for what we have, and there are things that need to change. And so you start looking at, how does this feel? How does this feel? How does this feel? And I navigate that mostly by how it resonates with me, but I would be super curious to hear how you all navigate intentional change as opposed to change that's just thrust on us.
Where you don't really have a choice, and you really don't have the moments to just sort of relax back and wonder, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kathy, you almost like you had something to say there.
Yeah, this is just so synchronistic, because the one subject, my curiosity, was exactly the same, change. That's exactly where I was, if there was a subject matter that was going to be brought up. And so it's really interesting, because when I look at all of the people that are in our group, both here and in our wider group within the Compass Conversations, practically every one of us is somebody who it may be facilitating change for another person, because we're all mentors, or we're teachers, or we're helping people in a different path. And so change is such a massive part of my work, and I think all of our work, because why do people come to us? unless they're looking for help with change, to be better with their horses, you know, a better person, help their health, all of the different things like that. And I've thought about it long and hard as well, because I found I'm in a massive place of change at the moment, in that so many opportunities are opening up in front of me and I can't do all of them. It's a case of, where do I go? What's my feel? And I think that probably, you know, Crissi, because I saw your post that you put up this morning, for me it was this morning, about crossing the river. It was so beautiful. And
Thank you.
I just think exactly what you said. For me, there's no wrong in that. You try the different avenues and see, and the answer will be, what is the feel? What do you feel? Does that feel right? Is it something that grabs your attention? Is it something that excites you? And so I'm sure we have within us a vision of what might be the next step. And so we take that. And this is where I am. So, you know, I really can speak from experience that, does it feel right? Am I doing it in the right way? And I've evolved, you know, so I've made a step and then I thought, I'll do this. And then it's like, no, draw back. Okay, that's fine. That didn't feel quite right. Where do I go now? You know, what can I try? And I don't think there's a wrong try, because without experimenting, without taking that next step into whatever it is, you won't know. And if we try and figure it all out up here rather than feeling it, I don't think, you know, it's not as successful. I'm not going to say you're not going to get there, but for me, the purest way is to be completely open. Whatever opportunity comes within the sort of ball game of what you're looking for, try it out and see how it feels.
Can I ask a question? Two questions. Crissi, when there's that feeling that something wants to change or needs to change, what's the feeling that has you recognize, oh, that means something wants or needs to change? What is the feeling? And then similarly, Kathy, when you're talking about it feels right, what does right feel like? Because it's so easy to take that word and have it hijacked by the good, bad, right, wrong. Oh, is it really right, or is it the right? Or so what tells you it's a right feeling? And Crissi, what tells you that change is afoot? What's the experience that's telling you these things?
Crissi, you go.
Kathy, do you want me to go? Okay.
Yeah.
Rach being so polite.
No, you go. No, you go. Yeah.
I have been having this. So the direct answer is the feeling is, when I'm doing something, it feels heavy to me. It feels like it's weighing me down, like a anchor, not like a grounding feeling, but like I'm tethered. And when I think of doing something different and new, it feels more like champagne bubbles. So if I get energized from it, instead of feeling like I have to slog through it. So Kathy mentioned my blog, and basically what I'm doing is I'm giving up writing horse blogs in the format that I used to, because it was every month I was like, I got to write a blog, and then I didn't write a blog, and then, you know, that opens the door for that whole, oh, you didn't write a blog, you're so horrible, you're a writer, you should be writing. You know, I don't want to do it. And so I thought, well, I'll just let the blog rest and I'm sure it'll come back around. Well, it didn't. And so I have been wanting to change websites. So I thought this is a perfect opportunity to say goodbye to my WordPress site and say hello to a new site. And I'm still going to be doing horse blogs, but they're very different. And they're very much more heart-centered than they are, you know, if you want your horse to do lead changes, here's something you can try. I mean, you know, which is fine. That's not bad or wrong. And it's not that I'm not interested in it, but this new format that I'm doing really gives me that, oh, this is so exciting, I want to do it. You know, so that's how it, that's the contrast for me that I figured out so far. What do you think, Kathy?
I think that's wonderful. And I think so, making sure I've got the question correct, how do I know what is right? You know, if the choices are in front of me. I have to say, for a while now, let go of expectation of other people, which has been amazing. So I'm not looking for what is right, you know, what do other people think would be right, or the preferred way of going. And I do understand that when people are in the moment of change, they can have their friends and their loved ones might be less than enthusiastic, which may be the protection mechanism of, oh, don't go there, you don't know, stay with us, it's safer. And so, you know, there's no judgment on that whatsoever. But it's very interesting because what you described, Crissi, about the feeling of heaviness as opposed to the excitement and the bubbles, that for me is rightness. So when I do something and I get that whoosh through my heart of excitement of, oh yeah, let's see where this goes, that's right for me.
We have a
Please
Yes.
chime in.
can't remember if we have buttons, but first of all, I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invite. Just to see all of your smiling faces again, to be able to just catch up and visit and explore is such a treat. I'm really thankful that it wasn't just like the one-shot deal with the summit, but we have a relationship, we have a community, and that's wonderful. And so, and then it's pretty neat that, but probably not a coincidence that we're all talking about change, because I was going to talk about change also. I'm open to, I'm in a process, and so it's a good topic, because all of us are in a good place. I think we're all doing great stuff. We've all learned a lot of life lessons to get us to where we are. So in a way, it's almost like, well, should we change again? Or, you know, it's, and of course the answer is we always change, and that's a beautiful part of life. And but still, like on a day to day kind of nitty gritty basis, like, okay, what, you know, what's what here, and making those kind of minute decisions turn into big things. So it's a good discussion to have, I think. Really good discussion. I am myself coming up kind of a period as far as work is coming to a close, and so I get to choose what to do next. And so there's going to be some kind of change in some kind of direction, and you know, I want it to be the one that's meant to be, and that will be the most peaceful. I guess that's my whole goal, is that the outcome, I want it to be on the path that it's meant to be, and that it's a peaceful one for everybody involved. But how to do that was, I think, a part of the original question. And I agree with everything that you know, these wonderful ladies have said. And of course, being in touch with what you are feeling is like goal number one for almost everyone. And to be able to follow that and have ourselves permission to follow it, that's huge. I mean, if we could all do that, the world would be a better place. But also I do practice prayer, and I feel like you know, of course that's defined in so many different ways, but, and even for myself. So even the simplest of things, the simplest of appreciations, the simplest, you know, beauties that we notice in the world are a prayer. I mean, and I feel like there's a spiritual energy, there's a universal energy that's everywhere all the time, and we don't have to have a fancy ritual or anything to tap into it. But we can kind of get lost from it just with our big brains trying to make decisions all the time. So I do, even though I believe that, at the same time, I find that if I get to a point where I really need help with a decision, and if I go through some kind of a process to ask for that help, and And that makes it sound like it's so separate when I know those things are inside of us too, those powers, that guidance. But I feel like when I go through a process of asking, then the answer that comes back might be the same answer that I might have come to otherwise, but it feels more solid, like I don't question it. And I'll give an example. Right now, my boss is also like, who was my husband's like close friend, like brother growing up, and is now the husband of my best friend. We're all enmeshed to no end. I mean, we couldn't be any more enmeshed. And our kids play together, and you know, all the thing. The dogs just run back and forth, everything. We're neighbors. But he's also my boss. And so there's sometimes weirdness there, and therein partly lies the decision of my future paycheck, I guess. And so when I did, there was a point where I kind of just reached out at one point in a prayer, and the answer was very clearly that he is my brother first before anything else. And it just settled really deeply because of that. And maybe it's just me that I need that process, whatever. But when I went through a little bit of a ritual of prayer and asking, and that hit me that he is my brother first, and I love him and he loves me, and we're gonna all grow old together. And it just puts me in a place of love and you know, like an absence. And that works for me. Not like every day is that type of process, or that every day is easy, but it's something in that I do, and for me it does help.
Go ahead, Carla.
Yeah, beautiful, Jess. And I think I'm doing something a little similar with the like praying and asking. And with the training that I went through with the meditation school, we have quite a systematic way of approaching questions like these, like change and what do I want to do next, etc. And we really have a practice where we sit with another person and we both go into a kind of meditative state. And then we let the question come, like, like a certain question around the change or something, let the question come, let it kind of land between us. And then kind of both tune in what's above, what's happening above, and what answers we get. And there are sometimes very surprising answers, like things that the other person couldn't possibly know, right? Or things that you would never have thought about yourself, right? And usually it comes with a lot of clarity. And so these practices, having something like that is so useful. And it is a bit like a prayer, but you're really you are having another partner, another person to do it together and find the answers. But what's also happening for me right now personally is that I know there is change in the air, really, but it's not clear yet. And so it's also not quite clear, should I keep it, just let it mature in the background until I know more about it? Or should I really take action now? Because, maybe I'm missing out if I'm not taking action now, but maybe I'm also doing something prematurely because there might be something there that I'm not even thinking about, right? And I did practice with a friend of mine the other day where we're feeling into and just getting a sense of what's important right now, and what needs to rest, what needs to mature, and where do I need to look further. But it's an interesting approach because usually the steps are clearer, and right now it's not very clear what to. It's just there's something, and I'm not quite sure yet what it will be.
I love it. Mark, do you have anything to sprinkle in? Any thoughts?
Do I have any thoughts?
Yeah, I know. Don't hurt yourself. I don't want it to stress you out,
I mean, Yeah, I think I look at it a little bit differently in that I don't see, I look at it more as evolving as opposed to changing. And so, and this is just, for me, when things are getting ready to transform or do something different, it feels like things are evolving to me more than changing. Because changing to me feels like, I'm on this path and now I need to go on that path. And I've kind of always looked at it like everything is one path, like it's all one thing. And so, and what happens is you move on from this, not necessarily move on, but you start to maybe expand from where you've been to where you're going, is kind of how it's always felt to me. So an example I can use is writing. So I've written a couple books, and for me, it got to a point where I felt like I had said pretty much everything I wanted to say or needed to say, or maybe should have said, and maybe had said all I should. And that doesn't mean, so I just felt like I was done writing books. I wasn't done writing. I was just done writing in that format. And it was really interesting because about that same time is when I started writing and moving in towards writing movies and movie scripts. And it's still writing, but it's a completely different thing, and so it felt, and to be good at it, you have to be, well, a movie, you have to be able to tell a complete story, all stage direction, everything, in 90 pages. So you have to, because every page is a minute on screen. And so it has to be really concise, but really colorful and tell a really good story. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was a very completely different way of looking at something that I had been doing for 30 years. And so it wasn't so much that I changed what I was doing, although I did, but it felt more like I was evolving into this other area of doing the same thing. And so for me, and a lot of times I think there's times when I feel something is evolving and I can feel like I'm being pulled in a certain direction, but it's not all the way cooked. It's not all the way where it needs to be in order for me to take the next step, but I can feel it coming. And, it's like little, Crissi and I went on a cruise, which I don't like water. And so it was 2 nights of being thrown across the room with the boat rocking from one side to another. But anyway, we went to this glacier. It was up in Alaska. And we went to this glacier, and we're watching this glacier, and little pieces are falling off of this glacier, and they call it calving, I guess. But just little pieces are falling off this glacier. And we were out there, I don't know, for an hour, a couple hours or whatever it was, watching little pieces fall off this glacier. And then all of a sudden this great big chunk fell out. And to me, that's what it feels like when things are evolving, but that's not all the way cooked, right? So you get this little piece of something and then another little piece, and something kind of starts falling away, and you know, the pieces start to get bigger, and the thing that you were doing starts getting a little smaller in the background, and this other thing gets bigger until all of a sudden the whole thing breaks loose, and there it is. And so for me, it's a process. It's more of a process than it is feeling like I have to, you know, I'm going in this direction and now I feel like I have to go in that direction. So it feels, to me, it just feels a little bit more organic, I guess. And it feels more like it's like I'm evolving. The thing, whatever it is evolving rather than changing. I mean, change is going to happen. It's not going to be the same, but it's still going to be a part of the next thing that I'm going to do. So everything that is back here, that's still going to go with me. It doesn't have to stop, you know, and not that I'm saying that anything that anybody else said hinted to that, because I don't think that's the case. But it doesn't have to this thing doesn't have to just stop. I may not be doing it as much anymore, but I can do it. You know, I can still, if I needed to, we can bring it back up. And, you know, I just wrote this newest book because I just felt like, even though I was done writing books, I just felt the book before that I wrote it was like pulling teeth. I mean, usually it's a fun thing for me to do. And that one, it just seemed like the information was like something in me was going, you're done writing this book. I'm not done. I still have 4 more chapters. No, you're done. You know, and so that was a little agonizing, but this last one felt really good to me because it just felt like, okay, that's it now. That's I'm good with that now. I don't need to do that. And while I was writing it, that's kind of how it felt. It was like, I can do this and then I don't have to do it anymore, you know, if I don't want to. So that's that involved, you know, where that last book, it was like that last piece hadn't fallen away yet. You know, it was still, and I think I was just trying to push on it to get it to fall away. And then, but now it just felt, with this last book, it feels like it's more organic, and it just kind of fell away and on its own. And now it was like a big weight off him, you know, and now we're going somewhere else. So that's me.
Can I ask Mark then? Just, I love the way you described with the glacier. That made so much sense, and the way that change in some people's minds would think about, I'm going to be that different person. But as you said, you're evolving, you're bringing everything you've learned with you, because that's an integral skill base, if you like. And then you've adapted, like you went into film writing. And I love the way you spoke just now about the last book, because it was almost like you'd given up the need to write, which was the pulling teeth book, that I'm a writer, I need to do that. You stepped, if I understand the timeline right, you stepped into film writing, and then you came back to the books because there was no need. It was was there a pressure taken away?
Well, what had happened was downstairs near and by the door of our guest room, we have my first 2 books are framed in a really nice frame. So for their first editions, and they hang on the wall. And you know, we've walked past those, that, as you do, that you don't even look at it anymore. You know, you don't even see it. And I was walking past it one day, and I just looked at it, and I thought, wow, that's really held up well, because that was a long time ago that we had those books framed, and it was a long time ago. And then I started thinking about the frame that the books were in, and the frame was done by a friend of mine, and I thought, man, it's been such a long time. His name was Dan, and I thought, that shop has been closed for a long time. In fact, he's been gone, dead. He passed away pretty young. He's been gone for a long time. I think he passed away like in '97. And this was done before, like 2 or 3 years before that. Man, wait a minute, that first book, that's got to be almost 30 years old. And so I came up into the room. In fact, the books are right above me here, and looked at the date on the first book, and we were coming up on the 30th year anniversary.
Great.
And that book, literally that book changed my life, talking about going in a completely different direction. I mean, I was just ranching and working horses on ranches, and it went from that to this.
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like there was something I just felt like I needed to do something to honor that book. And I didn't know exactly what it was. And then eventually I kind of came around to the idea that, writing a 30th year anniversary book would be a nice thing to do to honor that book and all that it's done for me. And so that was, that was sort of the thing that, I have skill. I can do that. I can bring that back to the table, even though, I'm off in a different direction here. I can pull that back up and do this thing for that book, for that first book. So it was a thing that I did to honor that first book. Does that make any sense? I don't know if that makes any sense.
Totally cool. Yeah, that was the stimulus, the inspiration, and as you said, you brought forward the tool that you had before, the skill, and away you went. So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I have a question for all of you beautiful people. There's of course, many writers and speakers talk about these different archetypes, and I think Wayne Dyer even put it into stages of life, like, you're a warrior, and then you're like I cannot remember them. I'm doing a terrible job, but it's like a community service.
But you look good.
Then you're like serving your community at some level, and then at some point you kind of evolve to more of an elder, and you get to just kind of do your own. It's just a different stage of life, maybe, as far as roles also, and just reflecting on myself a little bit. Like, I'm really getting into it's kind of an art, I guess. I'm doing adornment of tack, Western tack.
Oh yes.
So it's because I could just sit around the tack all day, and these ideas would come to mind with the beads and the stuff. Anyway, so I've been doing that, and I just throwing that out there, I guess, as a curiosity with your all experiences. Because I have been gosh, that sounds like it's not even about me, but my roles have been community work and doing, programs with kids and communities for probably 15 years. And I, in some ways, will always do that, but, I'm just trying to be open to the shifts. And like I said, curious what you all have experienced.
Are you asking just what we've experienced with respect to evolution in our communities or our service to our communities? I'm just confused a little what you were asking.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what that brings up, I guess. Changes in roles and changes in stages of life, and how that plays into kind of our day-to-day decisions, I guess.
That's a really good question. I think as I understand it, you're well woven into a very present, like physically present community. And that's a different existence than mine, for sure. I haven't ever had that sort of a dynamic around me, even in a immediate family, to progress, as it were, from youngness to middleness to elderness. And so I think I'm looking at it a little bit differently in perhaps what is the culture of oneself. And it actually has been dinking around in my head a little bit, because with the number of years I've been alive, people might say, oh, you're entering an elder period of your life. And that doesn't feel, I don't feel a need to identify with that, because I still feel like me. But that said, the way wisdom has opened up in me and my awareness, I absolutely feel not only more drawn, but I feel like I have so much more capacity to serve community. Like I get what that means in a whole different way. And just having a different clarity and a different sense of relaxation, maybe with just being okay, right? Like life's okay. It's okay. Everything's okay. There's nothing to prove. There's nothing to get. There's everything to give. And in that, I get to walk around and connect and receive everybody, whether I've met them before or not, whether you say they're in my community or not. I get to receive everybody that way, and just sort of always in connection with my own heart, be wondering, what is it that I have to share here? Not from a pedestal, like not from like, oh, what do you need from me because I'm the wise one. It's not. It's like the opposite of that. It's like, what can my heart give, even if there's silence, but I can show up and bring my heart to the room. That's been a shift, like my own sense of freedom to live that way, instead of needing to get something myself before I feel okay. My sense of that kind of generosity and abundance, that it's just innate. I think the mind is on board now, that to understand, oh, this is about how much of myself can I actually make available if I have something to share. So, not being in a physical community myself, but having more and more space within my own universe to receive everybody as community. That's been a huge change in my world. Does that address what you were pointing toward?
As one does. Yes. I remember you talked about your an earlier shift at the summit, and we said, yeah, well, as one does, and you do these great moves. And well, your gift with that openness of heart is just I guess just having met you, I can't imagine you not being that way, you know. But as you told your story before, it does make sense that you would be going through an internal journey to get you to this place where you show up at these meetings like with such an open heart, and yet a skill set to be able to help us with all of our processes. And yeah, so that makes sense what you're saying. Yeah, it really does. I'm so happy to have met you at this point.
Thank you. It's mutual. I'm mind blown that I get to hang out with this community of people. It's remarkable. Yeah, it blows my mind. Go ahead, Carla.
Yeah, I also feel that I'm definitely going through stages in my life, but I don't think it's the like as archetypal as what Jess was pointing at. It's more like there was a phase when I went to university and I was a student, like an economics student at university, right? That was a phase of my life where I feel I was a very different person than who I am right now. So it's almost when I remember there's an essence of me that I've always felt that's really the same from very young age on, where maybe when I was really young, I was more of what I am right now than I was in between. But then there were phases in my life when I was someone very different. Right? If I met this person now, I would probably go like, "Oh, who are you?" Right? So so I feel like lots of things that have happened in my life I couldn't even imagine when I was at university, was thinking of what to do with my life, or when I had finished school. What would I do with my life if anybody had told me you're going to teach horse riding and meditation and live in California? Being an economics student, I don't think I would have believed anybody, right? So there were definitely stages where, like, these 7 years at university, and then like another couple of years of training something else, and then another like 13 years of having my own ranch, which in itself feels like a stage, right? Like the places, the locations where I was, and how I developed at that place. And so I feel there are definitely these stages of evolvement or development, but I don't feel them as archetypal. I feel it's maybe even more zigzag. I don't know, like a kind of uphill zigzag.
I think I love your point, Carla. There's in personal, like, self-awareness and personal evolution, for really good reasons, the archetypal stories of, the hero's journey and all the different archetypes that people share and talk about. There's a good reason that those exist. Those patterns are there. But even when I started learning about these archetypes, I was wondering, like, what do I have to? Do I have to fit in an archetype? Like, do I have to be like that? Even if it looks like that, does it mean I actually am like that? Right? Kathy, like, what do you think, Kathy? You seem to get what I'm saying.
Total. I think it's called rebel. Yeah. It's
Ooh.
like, yeah, I'm not doing that. And I so echo what Carla was saying about her being the economics student and ending up where she is. Like, yeah, but as the science student, and the science was the whole way of my life, and now I am where I am working with what I do. It's like, yeah, slightly different, maybe a different stage of life. I mean, it's really useful. I love it, and I love the science. If I could spend money on doing scientific research into the way I work and and others work, my goodness, I would do it, because I would want to put that scientific rationale into what I now know. But what my truth is my experience now, or let's get it the right way around. My experience is my truth, so I don't need to have what somebody else tells me. And I think that's a bit like the archetypal, a totally understanding they're there and they're got. But when I read books I very rarely read books giving instructions now, because I know I'm just going to go, I don't want to do that. No, why do I have to do that? Which is probably a really bad character flaw in me. And it's all useful and all there. But yeah, I get that. But I'm me now. Whatever this is who I am. And every part, tying in with what Mark was saying as well, every part of me from when I was a child to where I am now is part of me. It's part of my work. It's part of my understanding. It's a part of how I put myself across. I mean, I find it very hard to be serious, and that can get me into quite a lot of trouble. But that's who I am. And so I really with you, Kerry, on that. That's like, do I have to? No, you don't. Just carve your own path.
I definitely don't think one has to either. Of course, but when I read the things and I hear stories, and there's always wisdom in stories, you know? And so I think it's a cool thing to reflect on. And stages sounds really like like steps or something, like really linear and regimented, and the evolution makes more sense. But I think to me it helps to take a step back and kind of look at our phases. We've sounds like we've all had more of an educational phase at one point, and then this phase, and then a phase being out. Phase sounds really superficial too. But again, just thinking about myself, parts of life and being open to shifts, and you know it's helpful for me to take a step back and say this is looks a little different than before, and that's okay. It's okay for me to look different, and appreciate the evolution, I guess.
The language we use is so important to be aware of, right?
Yeah.
Human minds get so magnetically drawn to the correct definition of a thing, whatever that might be in that moment, right? And like Crissi, when I was listening to you speak earlier about change and how it felt, I always love asking people what their words felt like what was the feeling that had you use that word, because it's always a feeling before it turns into a word. It just, we may not relate to it that way. And Jess, you were just talking about phases, or sections of our life, or what. I'm sorry, I forget exactly the word, but I was realizing as I listen that to me, how I relate to that word looks and feels like waves, like ocean waves. There's this wave in my life that I surfed and I called it college, right? And it was a tumultuous wave and I got hammered a few times, right? but relating to it as movement and waves without having to go, quantum physics, which Kathy, we could do, but without having to go there.
Maybe.
To relate to it. And I realize I've spent most of my life translating other people's English into feeling and imagery and colors and pictures. And it's probably good I didn't tell anybody about it, because they probably would have called it synesthesia, but it's a different way of relating. And to me, it just softens it. So like Crissi, you're talking about the website, like having a change. I can feel a change in what I want to share in the world. I've been feeling some of that as well. And because change, I think, is in the air. But I started looking at it as surfing the next wave, and I don't really know what it's going to look like, but I can tell if it's a good one, and if I'm in a good position and I can pick it up, and then it picks me up, and it creates a sense of effortlessness, even if there's a ton of work to do. It like you were saying, Crissi, it feels like that effervescence, like I'm already being lifted, and it's that feeling of like, oh, it's so easy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm when you said the word archetypes, Jess, I lit up. I got really excited. Because I think there are so many. There's an author, her name is Carolyn Mace. She wrote a book that is a very big influence on me in my early 20s called Anatomy of the Spirit. And she does a lot of work with archetypes. And so I did a lot of work based on her work, and it was really fun. And it was very insightful. And I also relate to what Carrie and Kathy and Carla are all saying, is it's not that clear cut. It's not first I'm this, and then I'm this, and then I'm this, and next year I'll be this. right? Because like Kathy was saying, we carry the culmination of all of our experiences within us, and that's what goes forward. And yeah, I'm like Carla. If someone had told me I would be doing what I would be doing willingly, meaning speaking in front of people and being on videos and giving interviews, I would have told them they were crazy, because I also went to school. I got a degree in philosophy. So in some ways that translates, because I love to, philosophize. But I thought I would just spend my life with my own horses doing my thing and having a job and teaching, and that was going to be it. And so my life has become much richer than I had ever dreamed it could be, and I feel very grateful for that. And I agree, it's not a stage, it's not a phase, it's I like your analogy, Carrie, it's the wave. I did a wave for a while called college. I love that. And then I did a wave for a while, a wave, for my 20s, my 30s. And now that I'm in my 50s, it occurs to me that a lot of what I feel like I'm undoing is what I interpreted as what women should do, who a woman should be. And I think men go through it too, but I'm not a guy, so I can't speak to it. But I feel like at this part of my life, I'm unraveling a lot of programming that I was either told directly or I intuited, that I picked up for whatever. So, it's kind of an exciting place to be, is to unravel all of that stuff everyone else told you, that, this is what a woman is, or this is what you should be, and to go and to question it. Say, is that true? Is that true for me? Okay, that thing is true, but that thing, so not true. So yeah, I really enjoy this conversation, different ways of looking at it, the zigzag. And I can't go quantum with you, Kathy, because I don't understand science, but I can philosophize about it.
Which I can't, so that's fine.
And see, to me, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh man, we have about 5 minutes left in wrapping up our hour. Are there any final thoughts or ponderings or golden drops of wisdom that anybody wants to share? Because Crissi, we could go launch on what you actually just brought forward and the unlearning that is not dependent on gender. Of course, male people were also born into a society with expectations and pressures, seen or unseen. It's not gender dependent, and it's a brilliant conversation.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is a brilliant conversation. Honey, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Kind of getting back to, excuse me, when Jess was talking about, sort of the stages, and then ultimately becoming, an elder, if you will. And it's interesting because in martial arts, those roles are very clearly defined here in the States, more so than in Japan, for instance. And that's through levels or belts that you earn over time. And eventually you become a teacher yourself, or sensei. And so the role's very clearly defined. You start here, and then eventually you get to here, and now you're a teacher, and then you keep growing as a teacher, and that's the person that the other people go to. And it's several years ago, we were listening to a singer-songwriter named David Wilcox. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but in the lyrics of one of his songs, he said that he didn't want to just get older. He didn't want to get older without also being wiser. And that really landed with me. And from that point forward, I really started to pay attention to see if I could actually gain wisdom along the way in case I ever needed it. And at the summit, when I would be talking with people and the other presenters, and it was like everybody knew who I was, and I wasn't sure who they were. And it takes me by surprise when that happens. And I suppose it's because of the books, but I don't know, but it always takes me by surprise a little bit when something like that happens, in that I wouldn't say that it I feel a little awkward when that happens, I think. But then it occurs to me, especially after what Jess was saying, was that I'm at a stage at this point where I suppose I could be considered an elder. I've been around, for like it's 4 years now. So, I'm getting up there. But and I try to take that seriously. I mean, I try to take it, if I have information that will help somebody and they ask for it, which is kind of a big part of that. I try not to offer anything unless it's asked for. Then hopefully I've been paying enough attention over the years to where maybe I have enough wisdom to be able to answer that, and then hopefully answer it in a way to where the person feels safe getting the information. And so, there's a responsibility to all that, I think. And so, at some point, I just feel like I had to start taking that seriously. Just like I did when I was promoted up in the ranks in the dojo. Getting a black belt, a lot of people think that that's the end all, that you've made it. And that's in the dojo, you're considered a serious student at that point. You're not considered anything above that. And I see life pretty much the same way. At some point, hopefully I will be considered a serious student in this thing that we're doing, this life thing. And, it takes a little while to get to that point, but, I kind of feel like I'm a serious student, but I don't know. We'll see. And I don't want to take up any more time.
Thank you.
I was just gonna chime in and say, I talked a little bit about that unraveling process, and if everybody is open to it, I'd love to hear each of your thoughts on that, and then maybe we can end. Does that sound okay?
Works for me. Yeah.
Does that work for everyone?
We can do whatever we want. We're all grown up.
It's true.
That's right.
The theme of our
Well,
meeting.
most of us. Kathy,
I will never grow up. I promise you, I will never grow up. Yeah, I've unraveled, that's for sure. Crissi, remind me the unraveling. Sorry, I've been.
I think what I've been thinking about now that I'm in my 50s is that it appears that I am unraveling a lot of things I took on that weren't mine to take on.
Yeah.
Meaning
that's
what a woman should be, what a person should be, what a horse trainer should be. All these things where you feel like you have to slot yourself into a slot.
No. Yeah.
And so I was talking about how at this age it's really most of the time fun to unravel that. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts. everybody's
you.
thoughts, actually.
Yeah, no, definitely unraveling, because I went through a phase where I was the student, I was the scientist, then I was the farmer, and mother of small children. All of these were particular roles that had definitions within society. Well, I took them on board, that was totally my choice, and how I reacted to them. And I think my unraveling came firstly in about 2002, when my horse took me to the energy, and that allowed me to see a different viewpoint. And then the subsequent years of study and practice, getting to about 5-6 years ago, when I stepped into being me. And it was like, okay, everything else, I don't need to be anything else for anybody else. I just need to be me. So I think, yeah, I have slowly unraveled like a piece of knitting, pulling it apart. And now I'm this ball of wool that can be anything. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
I love that. That's great.
I feel I've really started unraveling when I started spiritual work, like more serious spiritual work 20 years ago, and a lot of like understanding of myself and what's really me, what are just roles that I've taken on, etc. So a lot of that work that I've done since then. I think it's really the last 20 years where it's like piece by piece by piece, it's been unraveling, and I feel quite clear about who I am now. I'm not entirely sure where I'm going, but the essence of me, I find that I've got quite a clear sense of who I am now after all that unraveling. Yeah.
Thank you. I like that you know who you are. You don't necessarily need to know where you're going. I think that's great.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference, right? There's a big difference of knowing who you are, what your essence basically is, and then what are your next steps. And you might look different on the outside, but I feel now I'm at a place where I will stay more true to myself no matter where I'm going.
Yes.
I think the unraveling, the freedom from compliance to those suggestions, right? For me, the way I started playing with it was when it really started being effective ripping out the knitting, right? Was when I was no longer afraid of the uncomfortable feeling of being trapped in a definition. And so when I would go, I could feel like people, I don't know if it's this way for anybody else, but I can feel when people look at this human structure and they see a certain color hair and they see a gender and they see what they see, and I can feel the painting in their mind of all of this, what it is to be a female and what it is to be a that. I can feel that projection, and then I can feel my reaction to it, which is generally like, get it off, don't label me as something, like, but the way I play with it, and I think this started like it started in earnest around 2010, when my horse went to a different home and I no longer had a horse in my life, and I had to ask, who am I without horses? And because I didn't know, right? The essence Carla's talking about, like, yeah, I know that essence, but it up until that point, I didn't know that essence unless there were horses to reference. Like, I knew myself with a reference point of horses. And so at some point I started to be okay just asking, anytime I felt that, the grab or whatever the yucky feeling is, then I would start asking, okay, so who am I without that? Who am I if I'm not female? Who am I if I mean, the body's female, can't deny that. It's, you know, there's science to it, right? So it's not about pretending something isn't what it is, but just to have a relationship with that question. Who am I if I'm not that definition? Who am I if I'm not right? Who am I if I am right about this or that or the other thing? So to me, I guess where I like playing now is in a state of constant unravel or a perpetual free fall where I don't even grab at definitions or comfort zones anymore. And if it starts to feel comfortable or grabby, then I can ask, okay, who am I without that? And it unravels things for sure, but in a way that constantly invites that essence, like Carla's saying, that invites that essence to show up and show me, who am I if I'm not that definition that feels so squidgy, or even if it's a definition that would bring a sense of, oh, power over, you know, oh, if I am a good this, then I can use that. Who am I without that? And then so that's how I play with it. What do you think, Jess?
It is such a good question, and I kind of feel like you, like it's kind of like it's just a constant, almost like free fall experience. I have here another layer for me, as I guess again our community here in our culture specifically, as far as there are, you know, there are certain rules as far as women and different tribes and, you know, all the practices and all the way down to ceremonies. And, you know, there's a lot of places in life where there's certain expectations, and I have to constantly like be in touch with myself and how am I feeling in that moment with that thing. Like, am I doing this action or am I engaging this thing because it feels right and it feels like I'm connected to spirit while I'm doing it? And am I offering something that feels good to offer versus I'm doing it because I'm expected to do it, you know? And that's in so many scenes all the time. And I have, but looking back though, this question kind of caused me to think back, which is always fun. It's like, where did that come digging up? Like Kathy said earlier. But I find that easier now. And I guess it's been a good twist or blessing because of a difficult phase. So early on, way back, you know, it was some pretty toxic family situations, and, you know, can talk historical trauma and all those things, but there was a point where it was really distinct. I was in college and undergrad where it was just a really distinct shock. I had started reading Melanie Beattie and all this stuff, and I was like, just this immediate realization that I could walk away from family because it's harmful, and that's okay. The world's going to keep turning. They will keep living their lives. I can live my life. And it was just such a distinct realization. And it was in some sense, it was hard. I'm trying to remember. I'm sure it felt hard, but now looking back, all I see is that it's like a lifting of, like, now literally there's a bunch of stuff going on with my family, and I can very easily choose what I want to be a part of and what not. Like, I don't feel the weight of having to engage in all of it, because it was a really big break before, and now it's a little bit more. I've integrated most of, you know, a lot of things since then, and I feel comfortable selecting what I want to engage in, and just perfectly fine with not. But maybe hopefully this is a learning for us all that that taking those big steps then makes it easier later on to the unraveling is just kind of a bonus then later. That makes sense.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing so much and of conversation of your heart and of yourselves. Any final words? Anyone have any lasting little drop of wisdom before we wrap for today?
Honey, you have anything to say? Anything to add to the unraveling conversation?
No, not really. I would just, again, I mean, I look at it like I mentioned earlier about the little pieces falling off the glacier. You know, that's basically how I see it, is, you know, in anything in life, because we're going to evolve one way or the other.
Right.
And so, and those pieces are going to fall off anyway. So, you know, I think just getting comfortable with that process is the key. It is for me anyway.
And maybe discovering how to participate in the process rather than feeling like you're helpless against it, you know. And that's the part where I think everyone's talking about know yourself and bring, my words anyway, bring yourself to it. Like, how can I bring my love into this, even if it's uncomfortable, because that actually starts to inform which chunks fall off and at what rate, and in a way that can actually complement rather than scare me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how to function when those pieces are falling away, which you can do. So we can all do.
As long as we're not in water.
Don't go in water. That's crazy. There's no reason to do that.
Now I want to go to Alaska cruise ship now.
What's that?
Now I want to go on an Alaska cruise ship.
No, I don't think
It's
you do.
amazing. It's amazing. You would love it.
Yeah.
2 viewpoints there.
I was in the room for 2 days because I couldn't move because the ship was rocking back and forth so badly. I missed dinner a couple of times because you couldn't walk.
Yeah.
They have railings along the walls in the hallways there that you can hold on to when the ship is throwing you back and forth. Yeah, great fun. Yeah, it was awesome.
Poor Mark. Poor Mark.
He was
You know,
very good sport. It was my 50th birthday present. Neither of us had been to Alaska, and that was a really pretty way to get there. So yeah, it was a good trip.
Yeah, believe me, it's first world problems that I'm talking about.
Oh, I do really want to go now. It sounds
It was
The rougher the
pretty
better.
awesome when we weren't on the water.
Thank you for sharing your guys' trip with us.
Oh my goodness. Thank you guys so very much for the beautiful, beautiful conversation.